Sifu, the newly released action beat 'em up by Slow Clap, is a game that takes artistic and gameplay inspiration from a wide range of digital media and still manages to create a unique experience thanks to its presentation and its rather unconventional game mechanics. So join me as we discuss all that and more, starting with instead of going for hyper-realistic visuals or stuff like that, it earns its beauty through sheer artistry and the care that is put into it. And that's not to say the game doesn't have technically impressive visual effects. It boasts beautiful reflections and physics effects, which are, appropriately enough, best showcased in the museum/art gallery level. Every level looks beautiful and unique, whether it's junkies in pajamas or suave bodyguards in business suits. All the levels have distinct looking enemies, all of which are designed in a way so that they match their surroundings better. On certain occasions, the game goes full on side scroller. Apart from paying homages to some classics, the effect looks cool, functions well, and doesn't overstay its welcome. The cinematics in the game also deserve a mention. They're full of transitions and camera angles which not only look good, but really add to the tone that the scene is trying to convey. Moving over to the audio, every impact, whether it's a roundhouse kick or a slashing knife, have satisfying sound effects. The game's soundtrack is also an absolute jammer. It goes from traditional instruments to electronic synth to a mixture of both, and still always manages to accentuate the mood that the scene is going for. All in all, excellent stuff. In terms of presentation, whatever the game does, it does well. So the presentation is good, but how about the content that is being presented? The surface story is very simplistic. 5 minutes into the game, you will be able to guess what the plot is going to be. It's a classic revenge tale. The normal ending is exactly what you'd think it would be. However, there is also an alternate ending that leaves things a bit open-ended. The surface plot is easy to follow, and if you want to know more, there is a board that the protagonist maintains which contains more information about the characters and the world. And while the plot may be simple, its stylish presentation and the solid voice work manages to keep it engaging throughout. The central focus of the game is clearly put onto the gameplay though. Now here's where things get interesting. The levels of Sifu are very linear. Apart from some shortcuts that you can unlock, there are no secret areas, secret items, or anything like that. There is no exploration here, which doesn't really take away from the experience, but still can be a bit disappointing to some. Sifu doesn't offer any difficulty settings, which I like because it's always these type of games which have the best implementation of difficulty. So how difficult is Sifu? It's quite difficult. However, just like anything else, Sifu's approach to difficulty is quite unconventional. More on that later. For now, let's discuss the combat. You have your standard light attacks which are fast but weak, strong attacks which are slower but do more damage and can even knock down enemies. You perform these attacks either by using your fists or by using one of the various melee weapons that you can find in the game world. Defensively, there are 4 things that you can do. First up is blocking. It's the easiest form of defense, but it also fills up your structure meter, which is basically the posture meter from Sekiro. If it gets full, the next attack would do massive damage to you. Every enemy in the game, including the bosses, also have a structure meter. If you manage to fill it up, you can perform finishers on them even if their health is remaining. Next up is parrying. Instead of holding the block button, if you press it on the right time, you parry the attack. This does not fill up your structure meter and it also leaves your enemies open to counter attack. When you get overwhelmed, you can use a standard dodge mechanic. It does not fill up your structure meter and is especially useful when fighting with a group of enemies. That, however, is not the main dodging mechanic in Sifu. By holding the block button and using your movement controls, you can dodge while standing in place, basically by ducking under high attacks and vaulting over lower ones. This is what makes you feel like a real badass. This is my favorite mechanic in Sifu, and I would love to see more fast-paced action games using this mechanic in the future. Most enemies only use high attacks, which is why enemies that chain both high and low attacks can be especially tough. Also, see that blue bar in the lower left corner? That represents your focus meter. It fills as you fight. Once it's full, you can use it to briefly slow down time and perform a special move. Okay, now let's address the elephant in the room, the age system. Look at the top left corner of the screen here. It shows your age, health, and your age modifier. In Sifu, when you die, you don't restart from a checkpoint. Instead, you get up immediately and continue where you left off. But you age up in the process. How many years are gained is equal to your age modifier, which increases by 1 every time you die. So basically, when you die for the first time, your age modifier goes to 1 and you age up by 1 year. Next time you die, your age modifier goes to 2 and as a result, you gain 2 years instead. As you age up, your health bar gets smaller and smaller, but your damage increases in the process. Once you reach the 70s, the next death kills you proper and you have to restart the level. Going back to the game's difficulty, instead of causing trouble to you in the present, it sets you up for trouble in the future. Let me explain. When I started playing, I died a lot in the first level. Each time that happened, I aged up and continued the game. By the time I killed the first boss, I was at the age of 60. Since I never crossed 70, I didn't have to restart the level at any point. I just kept going as I died. So in that moment, the level was not hard. But when I started the second level, the age modifier and the age itself were carried over. So while that level might not have stopped me from completing it, it definitely stopped me from completing the game. This is the true basis of Sifu's difficulty. So how can you reduce your age? You can't. You can only reduce your age modifier and as a result reduce the speed at which you age further. Even that is achieved by defeating some certain tough enemies who can cause you more harm in the process. So the only way I could reduce my age was to replay the previous level again and finish it without getting too old in the process. Every level saves your best attempt, so each time you feel that you have gotten too old, you just have to replay the previous level, you don't have to restart the whole game. The game only has 5 levels, each of which you'll most likely have to play multiple times in order to maintain your age. The real challenge isn't in overcoming the enemies, instead it's in doing so without aging too much. You must now be thinking, wouldn't I be bored repeating the same levels again and again? Well, it's certainly possible, but this is how the game is supposed to be played. The game unlocks shortcuts that you can use on subsequent attempts so that you don't have to repeat the whole levels again. But going back to the question, I never felt bored while playing Sifu. It took me around 10 hours and I played it start to finish again as soon as I finished it to get the alternate ending. Seeing myself improve and Sifu's satisfying combat was more than enough to keep me entertained. When playing games like Dark Souls, sometimes we defeat a boss barely surviving in the process, but in our mind we feel like we were some badass warrior who did nothing wrong. Well, Sifu will force you to become that badass warrior. I finished the first level of Sifu at age 60. On my second attempt, I did it at age 28, and I did it without dying on my third. Most of the other games that are known for their difficulty only ever ask you to be good enough. In Sifu though, being good enough is not enough. You have to be more than good enough. This isn't where Sifu's weird mechanics end though. The skill tree is also designed for repetition. You can either unlock a skill temporarily or you can spend a large amount of extra XP to unlock it permanently. If you unlock it temporarily, you will only have it for the current run, which means if you replay the level, the skill and the point used to buy it would be gone. It's fine even if you don't like the skill system, since most of them are not that useful anyway. Skills are basically moves that you can learn, most of which are either too situational or just not as good. I finished 2 playthroughs and I was only using one move in the process. Sifu is definitely not for everyone, but if you're someone who likes challenging games, Sifu, for its price, is an absolute gem. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Anyways, thanks for watching.